I'd like to call to order this regular city council meeting for Tuesday, May 28th. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Barb, will you call the roll, please?
Welton. Bizzard.
Here.
Bellinger.
Here.
White.
Here.
Rhines.
Here.
Gilroy.
Here.
Hall.
Here.
I would like to let council know that I did receive a call from Sandy, and she will not be here this evening for personal reasons. Okay then, moving forward, I'm looking for approval of the agenda, unless anybody would like to make a change.
Motion. Go right ahead.
Motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
All right. And then now we have an opportunity for audience participation, if there's any, on what, the agenda, approval of the agenda? Oh, yeah, all those in favor of the agenda? Say aye.
Aye.
There we go. All right, now we'll move along for audience participation. All right, and now we have opportunity for a public hearing for the 2019-2020 fiscal year budget at 7:02. Corey? Okay.
Was it published?
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe you might want to, we get to come back to that at 7:05.
Okay, at 7:05 published, all right, we'll come back to that. I'm looking for approval of the council meeting minutes for May 13th.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Noah, you've got time to give us accounts payable.
Yes, I had a chance to review all the accounts, and I'd like to make a motion to approve checks 71760 through 71835 in a total of $127,858.71.
Second.
Did you have questions?
Question for Scott, real quick. 5, 9, and 19, the Aetna supply, the water meter equipment, is that, how much more we got, are we looking? I know you guys keep some in stock, but, and for replacement wise.
We bought everything we need for the whole year's worth of replacements, basically.
Do you have an idea how many more old meters are out there that still need to be replaced?
It's a never-ending thing,
Okay.
because
I think
they
it's
have
kinda
about
like
a
a-
20-year life on them,
Okay.
and we held off really late this year and got our supply pretty low. So it moves forward into next year. And we typically try and do that if we can, just in case there's a budget problem.
And I think you try and budget about 60 grand a
Mhm.
So this is a year purchase right here?
Let me see where this, what was the date in there?
5, 9, and
5,
19?
9,
It's check number
$41,465.
71773.
year. I did research this before Friday.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, actually, I think there's a little bit more coming through.
There's another 516, I think, 3/4 inch water meters.
Yep,
Okay.
they don't all come at the same time.
Right.
We have something like 100 and some odd appointments that are scheduled over the next few months.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for answering that. Barb, will you call the roll for the accounts payable, please?
Rhines.
Yes.
Gilroy.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Bizzard.
Yes.
Bellinger.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And it is 7:05, so we'll go back to our public hearing for the 2019-2020 fiscal year budget.
The only thing I'll mention is that the budget is available on our website, williamston-mi.us. We also have a public copy available at the front counter. City Council, after this hearing, will entertain the budget resolution at the June 10th meeting,
Okay.
assuming all goes according to plan.
All right, thank you, Corey. All right, I can move forward. Oh, do we have any public comment regarding our 2019-2020 budget? Okay, all right. Did we receive anything, mail, email? All right. So now I'll just move right along to our action items. We have water bill dispute for 101 East Grand River Avenue, and we do have some information in the packet.
Do you need to close the public hearing?
If you could,
Okay.
formally close.
Formally closing the public hearing. All right. That's okay, thank you. All right, looks like Paul is going to come forward.
I am.
Please state your name and your address.
My name is Paul Joseph, and we're actually the owners of the 101 building, my wife and I. And we have a bit of a dispute on the water bill, as you folks are aware. We wrote you a letter, we basically explained what the scenario is. Essentially, we have a approximately $1,700 bill for the month of December. Now, we pay our water bill annually. In other words, we pay it, we figure out what it's gonna be for the year, we pay it in advance. When we got this $1,700 water bill, we were quite shocked because we're very proactive about our buildings. We make sure that they work. We replace any parts that need to be replaced. When we found out about the water bill, we immediately went to the 101 building. We inspected the place. We found no water leaks, no water damage, nothing. We then called the city, who came, and they were concerned because they couldn't find the shutoff outside for the water. So they shut it off inside, and we had all of these old pipes in that area, and they were afraid that if they shut it off, when they turned it back on, they would leak. So we gave them the authority to shut off the water so they could replace the meter. Well, they did that. While the water was shut off, what we did was we called our plumber and we had him come in and replace all those old pipes so that we wouldn't have the risk of a leak. We have 2 apartments upstairs. There was no water leakage up there. One of the tenants comes every other weekend because he's divorced. He actually lives in the Detroit area, and he comes up here to visit his children. So he's only here really 6-8 days a month. The other tenant owns a haircutting place right here in town, and she doesn't even shower at that apartment. She showers at her shop. So we don't use any water in this building. The wedding gallery, which is downstairs, we don't even flush the toilet because we don't go in there. We haven't had any action in that building for months. The only thing that occurs during this period of time is that they have a fire next door at the 109. And when that happens, shortly thereafter, we get the $1,700 water bill. We don't know how it happened. No one can explain it. They replaced the water meter. They said they checked it and that it was fine, the old water meter. So we have a new water meter, we have new pipes, we have new everything, and we have an old bill that we can't explain. It's completely out of whack. Our average bill is about $150. And for 1 month, it jumps to $1,700. What we're looking for here is we wanted to have the old water meter inspected by an independent party, which we have the right to do, I think. Well, they destroyed the water meter before we could do that. They tore it apart so that they could use the spare parts, and I understand that. But there's a problem somewhere, and we don't think it's us. And we don't think we should be responsible for the $1,700 water bill. That's why we're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Questions for Paul, or for Corey, or for Scott?
When was the fire at 109?
It was the first Saturday in November, right before election.
Okay. And there was no evidence of leakage in the basement or anything like that?
No, we don't have any water damage at all. We did have smoke damage, but we didn't have any water damage.
Now, the $1,000,000 question, maybe Scott can shed some light. Is there any way that the fire, or the sprinklers going off at 109, or the fire department using water could affect it?
I mean, I'd like to address that. So we did discuss that when I met with the Josephs. I did talk to Chief Yanis, and we do not believe that that's the case based on the fact they did not use a hydrant at all to deal with that. And from his understanding, there was a sprinkler head near the hood system that went off, but that was the only one that they said went off. And when they had to replace that, they had to do some kind of shut off in the basement, and it appeared that the line feeding that went out toward the alley as opposed to toward the west, toward the 101 building. Now, that was his impression. Can I prove that? No, to answer your question.
So there,
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, just
Finish,
one,
Jeff.
quick one. So as far as the city's concerned, the water department, there's no cause for this water bill being so much?
We don't have a direct
No explanation?
explanation for it. The only thing we could think of is possibly something with the boiler system, but I don't think you guys have experienced problems with the boiler.
No,
The meter was changed out because the new types of meters that we have on there have the ability to record instantaneous type of readings. And so when somebody has a problem like that, to try and help diagnose what's going on, we'll change the meter out. It wasn't intentional that the old meter was destroyed. But we have found in the past that if somebody has something that's like a leaking toilet or something with their water softener or something like that, we've changed the meter out, and then we hook a computer up after so many days, and we can give them a readout, and that actually has helped a lot of people figure out what the problem has been.
We've had another fire on Grand River in recent memory with the bucket. Did we have any strange with the buildings adjacent to that, any strange water bills, any?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't, Corey, are you aware of
We
anything?
did not look into that.
Okay.
So, question, is there an outdoor spigot or anything that somebody could have tapped into when reconstruction of the tavern was going on and it was overlooked or not seen?
not that I'm aware of.
The other thing is with a boiler, and you have a return line, and I believe you have your boiler water, and then you have a condensated, is it steam or is it,
Yeah, it's Steve.
so is there any way to tell that if you've been adding water to that system, that would be?
It's a closed loop system, we don't add water to it.
Good questions.
And
Yes?
can I just say
Yes.
that the next bill was normal. We didn't do anything. We did nothing,
So bizarre.
except have the city come and do the water,
Right.
and then
Right.
replace the valves and stuff downstairs, but the next month, the bill was fine.
Okay.
And the plumber came right away. Years ago, we had a problem, and it was a leaking toilet. And somebody from the city called me right away. We actually had the plumber come in and replace every single toilet that's in that building to make sure that we wouldn't have this again. But the next month, the bill was fine, plumber did nothing.
Right.
So that's, why, and obviously we owe for the month. We don't have a problem with that, that's in our letter, but, and we're paid, still, I think without this bill, we should have a credit of $158 with the city.
My only question is when the plumber came, did they go up to the apartments and check to see if the valve was stuck in one of the toilets or anything?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in addition to that, the city was considerate enough, when we found out, they immediately came over there, inspected the meter, and we gave them complete access to the building to say, you look around, see if you can find any water. We don't know where $1,700 worth of water went.
Right.
It's not in this building.
Yeah, and what approximate gallon usage is $1,700 water bill?
I've got it.
Yeah.
It was 158,000 gallons.
That is such a tremendous amount of water.
I don't think that
Yeah.
can go through a toilet.
No.
Would this require a motion to adjust the bill for the Josephs? Or how would this go down?
You would have to negotiate a resolution between them.
Can I add something?
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor? So administratively, I explained this to Don Marie on the phone, that we have to go by what the meter says, right?
Right.
And so at this point, what we've offered is a long-term payment plan, or the opportunity to appeal to city council.
Right.
Hence why we got the letter. And so at this point, as staff, we have to follow the read. That's been our practice historically here for a really long time. We don't make adjustments without some kind of proof.
Right.
I do recognize this is a highly unusual scenario,
Mhm.
but that is ultimately, what staff's opinion is, because we have to follow the ordinances, follow our procedures and policies that council's put in place. So to answer Councilman Weiss's question, yes, if council had inclination to do something, I do believe it would require a motion to direct staff on this area.
So, oh, sorry, I have one last question. Scott, in your history of being here, have we ever had a weird water situation like this? Where somebody, like 125,000, how many gallons?
158,000.
158,000 gallons. Have we ever had that, a weird thing like this?
We've had
That we
other
couldn't answer.
circumstances where, you know, you can't answer it. We've had some that you can answer too.
Sure,
like
sure,
We've had it leaking and coming out of a house. And
right,
when we've had that kind of a circumstance, we can see that it didn't go back to the sewer system, the water
Right.
did go in, and the relief that we've provided in those circumstances is we've relieved it on the sewer side because we didn't have to treat it on the sewer side.
right.
This one doesn't appear to be a similar situation, I guess, it's hard to
Right.
really say. If changing the meter out, and then we could, that's why you do that, because we change the meter out, and then with the new type, we can see exactly what happens. We've had water softeners get stuck and just run before.
Right,
Toilets are famous for this kind of an issue.
but this was,
This one's a hard one to explain.
exactly, because this was a one-time cycle, the bill prior to it was normal, the bill after it was normal. It's, you're sure there's not an in-ground pool in there somewhere?
Yeah, and
I don't know
there
where
wasn't a drop of water.
158,000 gallons of water went. We
Right,
have no explanation.
right,
And the city was great, they came over and they looked,
Sure.
there wasn't any water in the basement, there wasn't any, they came upstairs in the wedding gallery and looked at the toilets and
yeah, I
whatnot.
mean, my pool holds 25,000 gallons,
Yeah.
so that would be like 4 pools.
Yeah.
More like 6.
Dan,
Is this in the, obviously, you know, it's a lot of water. When you've seen other things where, you know, you mentioned toilets are famous for this, but is this way beyond the realm of water usage you would think for a stuck toilet, or?
I guess I haven't.
You haven't delved that deeply into it or whatever?
or, you know, my question, remember when I asked you about the weird water fluctuation that you saw with the tower and stuff? Like, back in that time period, was there any weird, like, water situation? that-
I would have to go back and really
Yeah.
scrutinize, because you're talking about a whole
It's a
2-month.
2-month cycle,
It
yeah.
says 13.
Yeah, it wasn't like, yeah, okay.
So, here's a question. The hydrant on the corner of High Street and Putnam there, when time frame was that replaced or repaired?
That's been broken for some time, it's fixed now.
I know the work being done on that, was that this time frame?
No.
No? I don't
Jeff?
remember, that's why I'm
I'd
asking.
like to make a motion that staff adjusts the bill for this, for the Joseph, for this address, the amount of $149.67, for the purpose that there's no explanation, the next bill is the same. The Joseph spent money to replace the pipes. I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Barb? Oh, yeah, Dan?
You know,
One
I
last.
know this is out of the, you know, crazy, it's a huge amount of water, but I'm also kind of hearing from staff that we've had other folks, and not in this exact same situation, but in strange situations that have had to pay the bill.
Tim?
You're not required to adjust the bill.
Right.
That would be a matter of city council's discretion.
Mhm.
If you weren't to do it, their remedy would be to bring an action against the city, and admittedly, they have no evidence.
Right,
The evidence that we do have is the meter was apparently working correctly, and we have to assume that that amount of water flowed through the meter.
right,
But again, it's a matter of city council's discretion.
sure.
I think that we need to do the right thing for our residents, so the motion stands.
Yeah, and it's not like we're setting a precedent.
I-
This is gonna happen again.
I have one final
We
question.
have to make a decision on what happened here.
Right.
Was
One
the
final
meter-
question,
was
then
the-
I'm gonna ask for a
Was the
vote.
meter cost paid for by the city for replacement, or was that done by the Josephs?
That, I believe, was on the city.
Okay, Barb, will you call the roll, please?
Gilroy,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Bizzard,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Yes.
Weiss, Rhines.
No.
All right, thank you very much for
Thank
bringing
you
this
very much.
forward. Sorry about the weirdness of it.
We can't explain it.
It's like one of those phenomenons.
That's just, we hope it doesn't happen again.
Right.
Yeah, we don't want
We
to
have
get back
plenty
to
of
it.
other properties, but. Thank
Well,
you.
and like I would like to just reiterate that Councilman Hall just said, this did not set a precedence. We take each of these situations on a case-by-case basis, so I think we did the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next action item, we have reappointment of Terry Nelson to the Parks and Recreation Commission for a term to expire 6/30/2022.
I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Terry Nelson to the Parks and Rec Commission for a term to expire 6/30/2022.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. Barb?
Paul,
Yes.
Bizzard,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Weiss,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy.
Yes. Next, we have the Weekend Survival Kits request for a fee waiver for the use of the band shell, and this is for their event for Saturday, September 14th. Oh, it's Barb.
They actually, on their form, it's for both the band shell and the concession stand.
Oh, okay.
Just
All right,
FYI.
so friendly amendment to that. Looking for a motion for the approval of the Weekend Survival Kits request for fee waiver for the use of the band shell and the concession stand.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Barb?
Paul,
Yes.
Bizzard,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Weiss,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy.
Yes. All right, we also have another request from the KCS Angels, request for a fee waiver for use of band shell, and this is for their event, June 8th,
And they are also,
for the concession stand as well, so, band shell and concession stand waiver.
I'm not familiar with this group. Does anyone know what this is?
What they do, this is Kurt Smith and his wife, I can't remember her name off the top of my head.
Tracy?
Tracy, yes.
Mhm.
They live just up Williamston Road, and this is a nonprofit that puts on proms and different events
For special needs.
for
Oh,
special
okay.
needs children.
Thank you.
They did this event last year as well.
Gotcha.
I'll make a motion to support it.
Okay, thank you.
Move it forward and somebody else can.
Second.
All right, thank you. Barb?
Bizzard,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Weiss,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy,
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Okay. I need to make an appointment of a council alternate for the Economic Development Corporation to the 2A, 2B. That alternate role was fulfilled by Mr. Hall, and I asked Dan if he would step up and be the alternate for that. So I'm looking for a motion to approve that placement.
So moved. Second.
Great. Barb?
Bellinger,
Yes.
Weiss,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Bizzard.
Yes.
Great. All right, next on the list is the Capillary District Library renovation request. We had Julie and Scott, they were here last council meeting, gave us the, what their budget looked like, what we had budgeted at the city, for 15,000, I believe, was what was earmarked for that, and they had an additional request for an awning outside, so Corey's put together a great memo. Corey?
Alright, so essentially what I did was summarize the request from the last meeting. Obviously, Cattle representatives had an opportunity to present to council the annual report and the renovation project, which I think was sort of an expectation as that project came to fruition. And so we did budget 15,000 in the current fiscal year that ends June 30th. And Cattle has made a request of council to consider. There's essentially three components. The first is 9,500 direct contribution to Cattle for the painting of the interior space, up to 4,500 for the handicap accessible door installation. Those two together is about 14,000. And then the secondary piece of that was the installation of a 24-foot entrance awning up to a cost of 6,000. If council was desirous of doing that, that would require a budget amendment, and so we've prepared a motion that would accomplish either of those two options at council's discretion. I did also consult our agreements, both with Cattle and Williamston Community Schools, ahead of the meeting, just to be sure that we had a fair understanding of what our obligations are. And so there's some language in there that essentially says we must provide the facility for cattle. We're responsible for certain upkeep and repair, including on the outside of the building. Under the agreement with Williamston Community Schools, we are also responsible for any renovations that take place. Cattle has to achieve permission, and I think Julie can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that they did get the sign off from the school board.
Yes, I was at that meeting last
Okay.
Monday, yes.
And so I think after talking to Superintendent Spina, there's some excitement up there about the project and the renovation that was part of this process back a year ago. The school is participating, they're gonna be helping with the cost to change out the interior lights. But again, ultimately, the renovation responsibility through that agreement falls to us. So for the benefit of the public, Cattle is planning to put in about $190,000. That includes the contribution from the city, Cattle, and private donations and funding sources as well. So,
And I had a really extensive discussion with Corey and really asked him to make sure that we knew what our contract was, what we had committed to, where the school stood on all this. So I wanted to make sure that we had the full picture of what our responsibilities were, where the school comes in with their responsibilities. So thank you very much. This is very detailed. And I like that you gave us two options. So any discussion or questions that we have at this? John, don't furrow those brows. It's the only hair you have.
It's okay, Jeff.
There.
I guess I have a question for Julie. I mean, we know the city pays like 100% of this for the most part for supplying the facility. And, you know, it's tough to swallow and sit there when we have other needs for money else in other places that, you know, the extra increase. Has anybody been able to go to the townships and ask for any contributions for anything along the lines of facility or maintaining the facility?
Well, the townships contractually have no
I understand that
responsibility for
contractually,
that.
but I mean, as-
We have not, but, you know, that is something we can do, but because the contract with the school is through you guys, you know, it would be hard to go to them and ask them to put money to something that essentially is a contract between you and the school.
Right. And I think, from my understanding too, when you guys were here and we had this discussion, because we would put out to bid, so we don't know that necessarily this would equate to 20,000. Our bids may come in lower for the awning, the doors, and the paint, right?
So to answer that, my understanding is that the infrastructure on the outside, we would be directly responsible for, but the painting would be a direct contribution to Cattle, that would be
Right.
under their
Okay.
contract. And the motion is worded as such.
Okay.
So, being devil's advocate here,
Sure.
what if it comes over the budget amount, are we gonna come back again and amend for more? Do you see what I'm saying? I just think,
Mhm.
I can say with certainty that the doors, we've actually had some quotes on that for some time, and they're
For
within
the
that.
handicap accessible
They're
doors?
within that
Okay.
frame. The awning, we have not gone through that process, but it's based on a quote that Cattle got for
Okay.
that as well.
I think, you know, we discussed the doors and the painting last year,
Mhm.
and, you know, we need to follow through with that and do that, but I think the awning, I think the additional 5,000 is a bit much.
Corey, what do we have budgeted for next year? And I know that that's, you know, the 19-20, and this is, the 15 is in the current budget,
Right.
but what do we have budgeted next year?
We do not have anything budgeted for renovations. I think it was thought that it would hit.
It would all happen this,
fiscal year.
okay,
Yep.
all right. And I do remember you guys saying that if we don't push it through, you guys have contingency, or you're gonna find it somewhere else. I mean, and I appreciate that you guys have that plan. Jeff, you kind of looked like you were gonna say something too, I don't know.
If we amend the capital outlay department budget an amount of $5,000, obviously you put it in there that we can do it, it's possible. Is it advisable or?
Is it hurting us?
Yes, that's what I'm getting at.
We will be doing budget amendments, across the board here in the 2 weeks at the June 10th meeting.
Okay.
I think I'm always conscious of hitting the fund balance too hard, right, when we plan for a project.
Right.
And we have, other facilities needs as well.
Yes.
We've talked about that in our budget workshops. I would say on the one hand, you have a project that is gonna take care of that facility for a long time. And so I would say that's a pro. On the flip side of that is, we budgeted 15,000, and
Mhm.
that's what we're bringing to the table for that. And so if you amend it, then I think you have to work under the assumption that you're impacting the fund balance.
Okay, I appreciate that explanation. With that being said, are there any other questions, discussion points? I'm looking for somebody to make a motion based on the two recommendations that were given.
I'll make a motion to support the Cattle Library renovation project with $9,500 direct contribution to Cattle for painting the interior space and handicap accessible door installation up to a cost of $4,500, and to install a 24 feet entrance awning up to a cost of $6,000, and amend the capital outlay department budget in the general fund to increase by $5,000.
Okay,
Second.
all right. Any other discussion? Any other final questions?
You said you had a bid proposal for the, or a.
No, we
For the
don't
doors.
have, just for the doors.
Okay.
And you said that was pretty close to being the 45?
The awning cattle, they based that estimate on a bid,
Right.
but we have not independently done that as well.
Okay. All right, Barb?
Weiss,
Yes.
Rhines,
No.
Gilroy,
No.
Hall,
Yes.
Bizzard,
No.
Bellinger.
Yes.
All right. What?
So you failed.
Three.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That's a very tough decision for some of us to make.
Can I make
with their
a-
vote. Yes,
Could we make another motion?
yes, we can.
I was just gonna do that.
Okay, good job. Thank you very
But
much.
go ahead, Dawn.
I'd like to make a motion to support the Cattle Library renovation project with a $9,500 direct contribution to Cattle for painting of the interior space and handicap accessible door installation for a cost of $4,500.
Okay,
And could I also add that I would like a 3-bid process to look at installation of the 24-foot entrance awning, and that be brought back to council for approval at a later date.
okay.
Is that equitable to me? That's what we
Okay.
budgeted now for the front half.
Right.
Right,
I'd like to see
Yeah.
quotes, maybe it'll come in at $2,400, maybe it'll come in at $3,000, but
okay,
not to throw it out.
okay. Not to completely abandon that idea.
I'll second that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Barb?
Weiss,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Bizzard,
Yes.
Bellinger.
Yes.
All right, there's still hope, Julie. We'll keep working on it, but, all right. Because we do love the fact that the library's over there, and you did give such a wonderful presentation, and everything that's happening over there, it was all meant to be. All right, our last agenda item, or action item, is the Memorial Park Storage Shed.
You ready, Scott?
Take the initial
Yes,
intro.
yes,
All right.
please.
So in front of you is a proposal to do two things.
Mhm.
One is to finish the demolition of the former concessions building that was there. Council may remember that that was demolished due to some safety concerns. But in that process, we left the, I think it's approximately 24 by 60 existing concrete that was on the ground there. the demolition happened in the latter part of 2018, and it was decided that we would reevaluate that in the spring to see if it could be a suitable foundation for the 12 by 16 storage shed that is currently placed on the tennis courts. That evaluation happened, and it was determined that it's not in a suitable position to be used permanently. So the first part of that is we have to tear that out and remove that excess concrete. We have trip hazards there and things like that. The second part of that is that last year, we had a 12 by 16 shed donated through the Honor for All Foundation. It's currently occupying a space on the tennis courts. And so after a lot of consulting within DPW, we talked to some of the users of those fields. We think that the location of the old concessions building is the most appropriate location for that shed. And so in order to do that, DPW, myself, and Stevens Construction spent some time looking at the process of physically moving that, placing it on a new concrete pad with a ramp. And so we have a proposal that would take care of that in this fiscal year. With that, the other piece of that I should note is that we did secure a donation from the Williamston Stings, which is a user of the field and the storage shed. So they have offered to donate $2,000 to support the project. They've also indicated to me that they would assist with some of the fence restoration that'll have to happen in that vicinity there. And so we would work with them on those solutions as well.
Okay. John?
Question number one, the initial demolition of the building, did that include the removal of the pad that we axed out of there, and were we compensated?
It did not.
It did not, okay. Darn it, you're supposed to say that.
Well, I mean, we purposefully left the concrete pad, hoping that we could relocate it and use the existing concrete, and after the buildings come down, we looked at it, it just, we can't stick into it.
So, next question is the city have a piece of equipment with proper length forks or the means of picking the shed up and moving it?
No, the part of the cost here is, Mark Stevens and I evaluated the building, we looked at it. There needs to be some additional bracing put on just to move it, because it's on a metal type of.
Steel stud.
Steel
type
stud type,
structure.
yeah. And we're very concerned about trying to get forks and things like that, and then bending some of those webs, and then you lose the structural stability of that framing. It's very, it's good framing, there's not a problem with that, but to pick it up and move it, we're afraid of damaging it. So we've figured out how to put some exterior construction on it, plus some interior bracing, just so that the building stays nice and rigid and can move. And it can be jacked up. He can get his trailer underneath it, we can lower it back on there and then take it over to the new location and kind of reverse the process. So thereby pretty much guaranteeing nobody can guarantee, but.
Right. So I guess the reason I'm asking is because I know Home Depot has these, this is where it came from, and I'm just curious how they move theirs around and what means have been looked at. I mean, I'm not saying you guys haven't done your due diligence, it's just, man, that's a lot of money to move a shed, you know what I mean? That's, I guess what I'm getting at, and I mean, I understand, but still.
And do we need a 5-inch concrete versus 3-inch? I mean, what's the standard that's required?
Then anchoring is code or no?
We're doing heavy duty mesh and steel rebar.
That's
We don't want it to turn into what's there now, basically.
I'm just asking.
I mean, if the building was out of the way initially, it would have been great, because we could have had this all set up and they could have built the building right there at that location. The other thing is by getting this moved over there, we're gonna then pour a separate ramp that's gonna, come down and mesh into grade. And we looked at even pouring that all as one pour, but we were concerned about having the ramp, trying to get the trailer backed up through there and not damaging the ramp, and it was two separate pours. But as far as the thickness and the mesh goes, you guys, we wanna do it right the first time and not have to come back.
I'm not a construction guy for that part, but just.
So with that being said, does the pad need to be 60 foot? The shed's what, 16 by, looking at the overall size of the area?
Oh,
Is there any way to?
no, it's a smaller pad.
Yeah.
It's 12 by 16 pad.
Yeah, we're removing the 24
They're
by
removing the old
60,
pad.
and we're
It
putting
was
in
a high
12 by
I
60.
misunderstood that, okay.
Yeah,
I thought you were pouring it back 60 foot.
no,
Okay.
no. And we're changing the orientation so that the entrance is a different direction towards the field.
That's got a thickened edge to all.
Well, I will say I do like the fact that Stings are willing to pony up some money because they do use it, so I'm happy with that.
I make a motion to approve proposal from Stevens Construction and Excavating for the relocation of the Memorial Park storage shed at a cost of $7,700 and accepting contribution of $2,000 from the Williamston Stings to support the project.
Thank you, Dan. Do I have a second on that?
Tim had something.
Oh, Tim, sorry.
I wanted to point out that
Oh,
on the
yeah.
proposal,
Mm-hmm,
the acceptance of proposal, the last two sentences require the person signing this, which is the mayor,
mm-hmm.
personally guarantee the payment. And
Tim, I didn't have time to get with Mark today, but my recommendation would be just strike that.
Yeah.
I recommend.
Yeah, I would recommend that too.
No, I don't.
Proper governmental contact,
That's why we
has
wanted
the
to-
personal guarantee.
Yeah,
And so if city council were to approve this, it should be with the understanding that those two sentences of personal guarantee would be deleted.
yeah, that would be great, thank you. I would like to delete that too.
All we have is the motion, but no second yet.
Okay.
So maybe the motion would be amended to
Yes, a friendly amendment?
A friendly amendment to strike
personal guarantee.
the personal guarantee language from the contract.
Thank you. Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Thank you.
Discussion.
Yes,
Is there a chance that this can go out for other bids for the simple fact that this is the only bid we have on this?
Well,
I know it's under a certain dollar amount, things like that. I know you guys do a lot of business with Stevens, but I mean,
Then I'd have to draw up how we're gonna do the whole thing.
the plan and everything,
It was one of these ones where we're like,
sure,
okay. That's why I asked for discussion.
thank you, all right. Anything else?
Yeah.
Yes, Kent?
There's been an assumption made that there's been a donation made. That shed was bought by the Stop the Loss Foundation. I think there should be some kind of statement from us doing that. I'm just, again, so everything is clear and above board.
Mhm.
And I don't think I should be voting on this issue because
Okay,
I'm the one that did that.
yeah. I would say that he can recuse himself from this vote, correct?
If he makes that disclosure of a conflict, then the rest of council agrees that he can be accused.
Okay. Thank you, Ken, appreciate that. Anything else? All right, Barb?
Ryan's.
No, no,
Yes.
no. I was planning, that would be a temporary site, because we were planning on removing that
It's
tennis
still
court.
gonna be used for that stuff in the future.
Yeah, it's all right, it's all good. I
Sorry,
just
Barb.
wanted to
Jerry
be
Ryan's.
formal,
Yes.
so that-
Gilroy.
Yes.
Bizzard.
Yes.
Bellinger.
Yes.
Yes.
Weiss. Hall.
Abstain.
Abstain. All right, that concludes our action items. We'll move right along to discussion items, and we've got some road rating maps that were provided to us. Scott?
well, we only gave you the last 3 years of road ratings. The new road ratings came in. I know that we're talking about infrastructure a lot.
Yep.
This last season, we invested in East Riverside. If you recall, there was a pretty good stretch there. And then we also did a pretty good stretch on West Middle Street as well. So you'll see that those two streets, we saw the improvement on the rating. Got them back up as a 7, which is pretty good. So we bought some life on those. I mean, you can go through and compare most of the rest of the streets. It hasn't gotten too much better anywhere else, so.
Okay, I have a question, because I'm looking back, we got 2017, 2018, 2019, and maybe it's, I don't know the color, but me in particular, because I live on Williams Street, in 2017, part of it is yellow, which is poor, which is fair. Part of it is 3, which is poor. And it stays consistent up to 2018, but then it goes from poor up to fair. How
Right.
does that work?
I haven't had a chance to talk with them directly about that one.
Okay.
That's a good
Because I was curious about that as well, although I do know that sometimes the streets are really close on the borderline between two rankings.
Okay,
You know, we do some repairs here and there,
okay.
but yeah.
That just
that-
really,
that
that
one-
just jumped out at me.
Yep. I have seen that before where one year they rated it as one and the next year they rated it as a different because
Sure.
maybe there was some small patches done or something like that, but I don't know that that street had anything in that piece.
Sure, okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Scott? Okay, thank you very much. There's no questions. We'll move forward. Just so y'all are aware, Holly, I asked Holly to put this next piece in for the board vacancies. We have quite a few vacancies on our boards, which means when we don't have enough people to make quorum, it makes it hard for business to move forward. And right now we have Board of Review has 1 alternate vacancy, Downtown Development Authority, we have 2 vacancy open seats. Economic Development Corporation, Tippett 2A, 2B, we have 3 vacancies. So that's really a critical one. I know it doesn't meet often, but when it does meet, we need to be able to move business forward. So getting those seats filled would be great. Parks and Recreation Commission, we have 1 vacancy.
You can plan on applying for that immediately.
Yes,
After
and
June 1st.
that would be fantastic, thank you. So I don't have
Mayor,
to
does that
ask for
include the one that we appointed tonight?
No, because what he is he's the
Terry.
alternate.
Terry
Oh,
Nelson?
no, Terry Nelson, she's a renewal, so no, that does
Okay.
not include her.
Roger.
Planning Commission, we show no vacancies, but we are expecting 1 resignation soon, and ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals, we have no vacancies. So anybody out there in the viewing audience, if you are looking to serve the city and volunteer your talents and time, we have board seats available. You can find the application on our city website. If you have any questions regarding what those boards do or what the responsibilities or time commitment would be, we do have staff that could answer those questions if you contact the city. Yes?
I'd just like to give one real example of where
Yes.
this gets problematic. So
Yes.
the month of May, we had scheduled a zoning board of appeals meeting. We had a quorum confirmed. We had a couple members that were not gonna be able to make it, but we had a quorum. And so when you go to ZBA, usually it's for a variance,
Mhm.
and that usually means that you weren't allowed to do something by the zoning code that you want to do, and so you're asking for a variance. That requires the city to advertise, to send letters out to everyone within 300 feet. And we did all that, and then that week or week before, we found out that one of our members had something completely reasonable come up, and he wasn't gonna be able to make it. And so we had to cancel the meeting after incurring all that staff time at work. And so when we have these issues, that's a real life example where you've got frustrated everybody.
Right.
You know, the resident, the applicant, all the people we've notified who were planning to submit comments and
Mhm.
staff. So I just give that example, that's one time that's
Mhm.
happened here in the last 12 months that I've been here, but it was a really big heartache to have to go through that, primarily for the applicant who's just trying to get some direction,
Correct.
so.
Just a quick question, that's very interesting, because I had a discussion with somebody today, and it revolved around communication, why couldn't somebody Skype in to a meeting? Because this person on the TV, and if they're out of state or whatever, but still be part of the meeting, but Skype in, because we're doing more and more
Sure.
remoting in, so is that a possibility with our?
Yes.
I'll answer this, because we actually had this come up at one of our Homeland Security meetings. For Robert's Rules of Orders, you have to specifically in your bylaws state how you can vote, how you can, the person takes the floor. That we're gonna speak on too.
Well, I can
Yes.
speak on this too, and I think we sent the generic client advisory. There's been a revision to the Open Meetings Act that now requires your board rules to include a provision that would allow a member who has to be absent due to military service to appear remotely. Now, we have advised from the beginning that you can allow that. If you want, you can allow somebody to appear remotely, but they cannot form the quorum because you have to have a quorum physically present. But you could allow someone to appear as long as everyone can hear them and they can hear everything that's going on, and yes, they can vote.
Right.
Now, because now there's this amendment to the statute saying that you have to allow this for military,
Accommodation.
well, you could do this for any other reason, like illness, or somebody's on a vacation, and yes, they could call in. The question is whether the absent military person could be counted as a quorum, because it says there that they will be considered present, but not physically present.
Right.
Be that as it may, I think that's gonna be a rarity. I don't think anyone here is on military service, but in some places they would be called up to guards, for instance. And so that's a possibility. I think we should consider amending the board rules, first of all, because you have to, under the statute, to accommodate military, but you could just indicate in there the reasons that you will allow this,
Sure.
as long as a quorum is physically present.
Yeah, physically present. Okay.
And does that also state for council as well?
Yeah, that's what it's
Yeah.
mainly for, the governing body, but it really applies to all public bodies, so any public body that's subject to the Open Meetings Act, which would include the ZBA,
Yeah.
and the other city boards and commissions.
It's good to hear, because I know that we have board meetings all the time, we have people in Phoenix, you know,
Sure.
South Carolina, we're all expected, they're all in one
Do we
screen.
have the technological capability of this, and it could just be a telephone with a speaker on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
mean,
also bring in a laptop and Skype in and show True around the other way and whatever.
sure.
I think we've got some things we can look at.
If they're available, again, the reason people aren't here is because they're busy doing something
Sure.
else and they can't do both
Right.
at the same time. But if they're at home recovering from a broken leg, well, yeah, they could do this,
Yeah.
but they just can't make it over here.
Right. I would say we probably would start out with conference call, speakerphone, and then if we get really brave, laptop
You got a projector.
and a projector.
TV behind you.
That'd be fantastic, right over there, actually. But yeah, I would say, since we have to follow the statute, that we move forward and start changing that language.
Yes, our office mainly advises counties and county boards, and so their proposed language for that, but it did indicate that if you're of a different form of government, you just do it accordingly, and but you have our council rules, and that's something that could be simply decided by a majority vote of council.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Tim.
You want-
Thank you. Next, we have youth recreation services. All right.
Thank you. So I'm just gonna do a brief refresher. A couple meetings ago, we talked to you about youth recreation services. Currently, we provide that service through a contract with Meridian Township. And that has worked out very well for about the past 9 years. As we discussed the last meeting, when we had this as a discussion item, the numbers for those programs have changed dramatically in the last 4 years, as other entities in the community have stepped up to provide different recreation services. And so it's changed so much so that what used to generate a little bit of money is now costing the city a little bit of money. And so it's not at that break-even point that we're always hoping that it would be at. Another side effect of that is that there's been more competition for field space throughout the school district and some of the other places where we have facilities for these programs. So at that meeting, it was discussed that I would spend some time talking to some of these other organizations in the community and how they offer these services to find out if we should have a role in this going forward. And so I wanted to report back that there's really 3 sports that we're concerned about: flag football, basketball, and baseball, softball, which I'm kind of lumping together since they use the same fields. At this juncture, I can say definitively that the group that took on cheerleading and tackle football a couple years ago is planning to offer flag football for the youth coming up this fall. That's independent of what we do here, and that's their plan going forward. If you remember, when we looked at some of the information a couple meetings ago, flag football was the one group that was growing in membership. And so I'm doubtful that that will continue to happen if this other group, which I think has an affiliation with the football boosters, starts up. I think we're gonna see further eroding of our numbers. Basketball, also a very simple answer. The group through the boosters there, they already offer 4th grade and up. Last year they had a 3rd grade team, and they would also be very interested in taking it all, going K 1st and 2nd. Which is currently all that we offer. Baseball is the one that's a little bit more difficult, and so there's a group in town, the Williamston Stings, that we talked about earlier. Their membership has continued to grow over the last couple of years, including this season where we're seeing their numbers growing as well. We are offering baseball and softball currently this spring on our fields here through Meridian Rec. At this point in time, Williamston Stings, they have a under 18 and up. My understanding is that there are some changes in the governing group of that league, where they're gonna begin offering to the younger kids, and I can get technical if you'd like on why that's the case. But they are not yet prepared to say that they're gonna have a T-ball program or like the first level of coach pitch. So that is today what our youth would be engaged in through the Meridian Rec program. So with those things in mind, the goal of this discussion has been to make sure that no kids are left behind with their opportunities. And while the Sting representative had told me that they would explore offering T-ball or some kind of clinics, they haven't made that decision yet. I think partly because we continue to offer this through Meridian Rec, and partly because their priority has been largely on the older kids, 8 and up. With all those things said, Meridian Township is looking for some direction for us. And I think given what I've learned with some of these other groups, I'm leaning heavily toward encouraging the dissolution of that relationship going forward. Allowing the other entities that have set forward to offer these programs to continue to do that, and basically separate the city from that responsibility. The other piece of this that kind of keeps playing in my head is as we pick up the tab for that program, the data shows that only 24% of the participants are actual city households that are paying city taxes. I think that's a hard issue to grapple with because ultimately I think the council is responsible for the city limits of Williamston as much as we try to be partners with our neighboring townships. I'm not sure that responsibility should fall to the taxpayers for the other 76% of the students. So I wanted to get some feedback on these discussions with the council before we go forward. The only other thing I'll add is there's a possibility that our kids at those T-ball levels could still sign up for a program offered through a Meridian Township, but they wouldn't have the convenience of having those necessarily on local fields here. That's something I could discuss with them a little bit further over at Meridian. But I know we had 2 or 3 cases where families signed up in Meridian Township and then they got their schedule and it was all over there. Mr. Rhines was one of them, but he was not the only one. There was about 3 that we got calls about. And we were able to fix that and make sure they're playing here in Williamston. So I know that that's not everybody's preference, but it is something that has happened as recently as this season.
So,
John?
what's our annual expense right now with?
Yeah, so it's averaging, we don't have the final numbers yet for the 17 and 18 season, but I think we're looking at about $2,000 out of pocket for those 2 seasons. The previous 2, it was around $3,000 for those 2 seasons. And the projection is not great. If flag football starts up through the boosters program, flag football was the one of our 3 sports that actually generated more than it cost. So it was, in effect, it was paying for some of the other losses, if you will, from those other programs.
I was just gonna say that my grandchildren play with the RCA group. They're in town here Tuesdays and Thursday nights, and they play games and Oklahoma. So they do have to travel to do their things.
Sure. This is, I see, there's a lot of moving parts with this one. After we discussed this the last time, you were gonna reach out to some of the other, Williamstown, some of the other townships and see if they were willing to do anything. Was there any feedback from them at all?
No, Dan, I might have missed that in this, because I did not do that. I focused most of my efforts on the other leagues, so I apologize that I missed that.
That's good, and that is a huge issue that a lot of, RCRA was the whole school district, and then the schools, for whatever reason, decided to get rid of that, and the city picked it up, but we're still servicing the whole school district. And that's, you know, it's not fair for our taxpayers to pay for everybody, but at the same time, specifically with the issues I see, I've talked to a lot of different parents since we brought this up the first time. And if you go, this is a large issue mostly with baseball, because these club teams, once you get away from the rec league, they travel all over the state. You're not driving to Mason or Okemos or whatever, and if your choice becomes you play on the Stings or you don't play baseball, mom and dad aren't paying $50, they're paying $200 for you to play for the season plus tournament fees. If we do this, do we price certain families out of playing? It's, I don't know, it's something I've thought about a lot since we did it the last time, and I haven't come up with any good solution.
So has Meridian come and said that, yes, they will accept residents coming?
I think that they're open to that, but they would want to develop the framework under which that happens. So right now, obviously, there's a way for kids to sign up because it happened to these couple cases I'm mentioning. But I think they'd want to more formalize that, and that was something that we could work through. But I didn't want to start that unless I had some feedback here on is that the direction we're going. But I do think that they'd be open to discussing that with us.
Does anyone know the history of our Red Cedar
Red Cedar
Recreation?
Recreation.
So I played RCRA
I
T-ball.
coach.
Ball. Noah or John, do you know did the schools handle it, or did the city?
So, I don't
Yeah.
remember what year it was, the school decided,
Yep.
we're not doing it. There was a big crowd here, asked the city to pick it up. The city picked it
The
up.
schools had 2 employees that were paid employees that ran RCRA. And for whatever I mean, so they had enough coming in that they could pay a full-time person and an assistant.
Yep.
And
Well, and
I
even
think
going back farther than that, when I was a kid, because Tom Barrett's a couple years older than me, Tom Barrett was the coordinator for the program, because during the summer months, he had one of the counselor's offices over in the old middle school. And then when I graduated, I coached softball for a couple of years and basketball through rec. So, you know, it was always kind of the school had the person there doing it and
But I
everything.
think a lot of it played back, if I remember, into liability.
Yeah, probably,
insurance,
yeah.
And other things, legality type issues.
Yeah.
That went along with that.
Well, and the whole coordination of finding all the umps, making sure the fields are groomed, who's doing that, you know, I mean, it's a lot of
we
effort.
still have fields.
Yeah, we have fields there.
Or, no, I meant the schools still have.
Oh, yeah,
But I also want, I don't know if you guys know, but the Stings and some of the other groups also go to some of our local organizations.
Sure.
Like Kiwanis.
Yeah, yeah.
And we donate,
Yeah.
and we sponsor a youth or a
yeah,
family
yeah,
through it.
yeah.
So they're soliciting other funds as well to support those organizations.
Mayor?
Yes.
One other thought I forgot to mention, I think Councilman Bizzard asked me what was the cost the last couple of years, and I mentioned we haven't had a final accounting yet. We're still waiting on some information about the basketball season from one of the facilities. But those numbers I quoted you were after Meridian gave us a pretty significant discount on their administration cost. And I don't know what it would have been without that. I could get that to you, but needless to say, it would have been a lot worse than the $1,000 to $2,000 that I mentioned.
Have we had, and I don't think we have, but have we gone back to the school board to see if maybe the school wants to take this back over?
That's gonna be my question, have we?
You know, I mean, have we approached them and said, you know,
So I've chatted with administration there about
Yeah.
some of these issues, primarily as it pertains to field space. And I was told that there's not an interest in doing that. I don't wanna put words in anybody's mouth, but that was the impression that I got.
So it would require the city has to develop a rec manager
Well,
and start a
resurrect
and start a
the
program.
RCRA
But I think,
coordinator role.
I think the only way that could happen is if you get buy-in from the surrounding townships, because if we do all that and we hire someone and do it, we're still 76 to 24%.
But here's the thing, is the interest there? You know, that's the big thing.
I think what I'm telling you is based on my conversations with at least these 3 entities. They're picking up most of this
They're
responsibility.
doing it on their own.
You were really talking about T-ball and maybe the six-year-old coach pitch and possibly some seven-year-olds. Now this year through Meridian Rec, we have at least one U10 team and one U8 team. And then the rest, I think, are pretty much T-balls for our participants through
So-
that program.
Yeah,
I don't-
John?
I got an idea. What if we threw it out there that these organizations are able to, I mean, it's no different than what you guys are doing now with the jerseys and stuff here, but hey, here you go, this is where you come to play ball, we have it posted somewhere, this is who you contact, or there's a liaison through here, and you know what I mean, and that costs stay here, especially if they're offering disadvantaged families the opportunity or a spot, you know what I mean? And it's not just eliminating it altogether, we're asking them to, I guess, pick it up, you know?
I think they're already doing that.
I mean, it's hard to just say no.
But if you went back to the strings and said, we have X amount of money, can you help do a T-ball and other things, would that be, the city's willing to help? Is that it?
I guess part of, I don't want us to lose track, because this has been in my thought process, I've been thinking about this, is when you eliminate rec, and we're asking basically club teams to pick it up, you're going from kids that play casually 2 nights a week or so with a practice and a game, to a highly competitive, you know, I know my nephew had to try out for his club baseball team, which is the Stings equivalent in Mason, in January.
Yep.
You know, T-ball start, that's what we're talking about, having pick up, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's not it's not apples to apples.
So that's
Right.
where you do a lot of your recruitment, a lot of look at getting kids interested, and that's how you build the bigger programs. That's what they did with tennis here over the years with coach. There's a lot of different opportunities.
Good discussion. I don't think we've
Resolved.
it yet, but good discussion. And it is, I mean, any type of organized sports is good because it helps build a great foundation for, you know, working with, you know, outside of your box and everything. And it develops relationships at very young ages. And some people that played ball when they were in RCRA are still, you know, friends and everything. And so it's an important thing. We just need to keep trying to figure out a good solution.
So
Corey?
I guess what I'm gonna do in light of the conversation is I'm gonna chat with Meridian Township and see what kind of options we might be able to create that preserves the rec aspect of this. And I'll bring something back that would be
Yeah.
more like an action item
Okay.
in the near term.
Okay, I'm fine with that, I'm good with that. All right, we have no correspondence received, so I will move right along. Corey, you gave us your city manager report, would you like to add anything to that?
Just a note, you know, we had an action item earlier about a water bill dispute, and I just wanna note that, and we had a question about the meters that we just purchased. So I do think that investing in these new meter technologies is the right thing, and I think staff's very appreciative of the continued support to do that. I'll give you another example that came through in the last month or so. Usually when somebody gets a read like that, and I believe that the Josephs mentioned this in their letter, but we give them a call right away. As soon as that read comes in, Ann in our office calls that user to give them a heads up, usually asks if they're sitting down, because usually it's a shock. And so We had one of those scenarios recently. We were able to download the meter and get the information. And the information totally diffused the situation. When you had a resident that started out, how can this be? This can't be possible. And then you can show hour by hour exactly how many gallons were used, and it ended up being a leaking toilet, I believe. So we got a nice message back from that person thanking us for their help and that they would take care of the issue. And so that's the power of those meters. It's unfortunate that we didn't have that meter technology in this particular situation. But I think eventually we'll get to a point where between having the new meter installed and then going to a monthly billing where we can catch these things a little bit quicker, I think, we probably won't have a scenario like that in the future. The other piece of this that is I just want to plant the seed. There is technology out there that allows you to do instantaneous real-time reading, and there's an app that your residents can look at these things. Scott and Dan and the DVW have actually done a little bit of research into those things, and the cost that it would take to do that installation. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but I will note that when I talked to Mr. Joseph, who's on our TIFA board, he wondered if that's something the TIFA could help with, because, the water tower is in the TIFA district, and we haven't really pursued it that much, but that to me was kind of the tone of our conversations, was trying to find a solution to that problem. And then the last part of that is, as far as, testing the meters, when this came up, I don't think we've ever had somebody request to test a meter, and so it was unfortunate that we didn't have that available to do, but I think, we learned a lesson there, and that's something that we can offer if it ever comes to that in the future. But it kind of tied together a lot of the questions tonight as far as, the new meter technology, and what we try to do to help residents when we have tough situations like that. So just want to thank the staff for dealing with that one and helping us through it, and we'll make sure we use council's action.
So I have a quick question, that new technology you're talking about, is that something that could be a choice of the residents to pursue? Or I don't know how it works, I guess, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because a lot of us, internet service, things like that, and
Right.
I hate to say going that way, but I mean, it'd be nice to have, like, I can get on my thermostat and see what my temperature is in my house.
The issue there is that it's a big one-time expense, and so
Okay.
you'd have to ask the residents for, a rate increase, very likely to cover that cost.
No, but I'm saying,
So-
for just my residents, is that something?
Right,
that-
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Is it just something that hooks to my meter or my water?
No, it's a big,
Yeah, Scott, go
Okay.
ahead.
So we are slowly converting over to the meters and the thing that we call an MXU, the remote reader, to get that enabled in the system, but there still would be a cost to do the tower part of the system that reads all of that.
Right.
Currently, we have equipment that goes in a pickup truck, we have to drive it around town
Yep.
to pick up those reads. And that saved us a lot of money already.
Right.
Because it used to be that it would take the city 3 weeks of 2 or 3 people walking door to door to do that. And then they changed to like these hand remotes, so they didn't have to go in houses, they could just do it from outside the house or touch the thing. Now we're at this point where we can take all the reads within 2 or 3 hours on one morning. And then if you go to the tower situation, there's an investment there. You can be at City Hall, push a button, you have all the stuff. That technology also allows it to have the residents to be able to go online with an account and have even an alert sent to them. That, hey, you have high usage, and you can look in your account and see what's going on. We would then get flagged as well that there's something out of the ordinary usage going on. So the technology's there, but there's also like a server cost that you have to pay every year and all that. So in order to have that available to everybody, we still have a lot more to go to replace out in the system.
Okay. I just maybe misunderstood it, as it wasn't just a connection there at the meter that I could get on my smartphone, and
Hook up
No, because
your
it
system
has
to
to
it.
communicate to
Yeah.
the
I
main
gotcha.
hub,
Okay.
and then
That
it will push it
clarified
out
it.
to
we
the
actually
internet.
talked about this a couple meetings ago, and that was one of the issues I brought up.
Okay.
The new technology, because you can eliminate labor
Right,
and
right.
technology.
I think it may have been at the budget workshop.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you for that. Any other questions for Corey off of his report? Okay, moving right along to Chief.
I do have one thing.
Yes.
Yes.
Yay.
Officer Dick Stonebrook, who has served this community for many years, has submitted his request for retirement. So his last day will be June 28th.
How many years has Nick been with
I
us?
don't have that, he just submitted it this morning, so I don't have that exact figure. He was at the sheriff's office for many years, and he's been here for at least 15 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
And,
it's gotta be.
but I don't have that exactly. It was-
And you said June 28th?
Yes.
So what did it cost you to talk him through Jubilee?
I was free, he was just gonna volunteer for that.
He's not gonna disclose
Yeah,
that.
Chief's just gonna continue to smile over there, and that's okay. Well, we definitely would like to thank him for his service, so if he could possibly come that last meeting of June.
Nick, come to
Yes.
city council?
I know, right? Tell him it would be a special favor to me. Yeah.
I will have that discussion.
All right, well, thank you, I appreciate it. We did receive AGS building report, so it looks like we've got a lot of permits that have been issued for some good work around here. 'Tis the season of construction because we're moving into the good summer months and hopefully out of the wet spring that we've had. Would anybody like to share anything from a subcommittee report?
I guess I would a little bit. I'm gonna go over the fire ad hoc committee. We did, at the last meeting, it was actually a really good meeting. I walked out of there feeling a lot better about a lot of things. Just questions that Jeff proposed to him at the NISA meeting and that, they're gonna come up with a program basically and present that to us and
Okay.
something they can present to the other communities, or not other communities, but the other governing bodies as well. And then everybody would kind of fall in line and be the same, and makes it easier for NISA, and they'll have more of the information and be able to answer a lot of those questions that we had,
Good.
so.
Well, and I think that, you know, and not that we wanted to try to, you know, run the show or anything, but I think that this ad hoc committee formation really kind of opened their eyes a little bit to what can be done and how it can be uniform across the municipalities and be a benefit to them and a benefit to us and the municipalities that they serve. So I'm glad that those meetings are now going in a good direction.
So-
And we're getting good feedback from them.
Corey, if I were right, we're looking at some type of meeting sometime in August, correct?
Okay, and that's fine, I mean, I don't think we're in a rush, but we just wanna make sure that it's good for our downtown group and our, businesses that are out there that would be affected
And
by
the
that.
one thing we talk about is the city is the largest area that they're gonna
Correct.
service when it comes to those types of
Right.
enforcements and things like that. So, of course, we have the questions.
Yeah, absolutely, well, thank you guys for your hard work, on that ad hoc committee, I appreciate it, because I think it's important. Anybody else have a committee report they'd like to share real quick? Anybody else? Okay, great. Moving right along, audience participation, and we'll move along to council member comments. I'll start with Jeff down here at the end.
Coming into town, I noticed the 2 banners that are up, and those look awesome.
Yep.
For, I think, the St. Mary's 5K run and,
Farmers Market?
Farmers Market.
Yes.
I think those add a lot when you drive under them.
Mm-hmm.
They look really good for advertising, so.
Good,
I don't know
excellent.
if you guys put it up?
Tony does. From
Oh, does
TC
he?
Trees.
Okay, cool.
All right.
They look good, look great.
He's usually there about 5 o'clock in the morning.
Well, it's good to know that.
And if it does flip in the wind or whatever,
He comes
he's been
back.
back the next day and fixing it, so
Good.
5 in the morning.
Nice.
Good, excellent, excellent, dependable service. Dan?
No comments.
John?
I'm good.
Noah?
Just also all the American flags that are along the street signs, with support from the Kiwanis and keeping things going, so great for the Kiwanians to
Yes.
participate.
Flags around Williamston.
Yes.
Now, how much is that for a flag for?
$40
$40.
$40 for the year?
for the year.
Yep, and we can put it up for you, we can put it in your lawn or in a bucket or whatever, and we'll maintain it for you.
Roger that.
I'll get a paper for you to sign.
Okay.
You good? All right. Well, I would like to say that I've been to the past 2 farmers markets. I kicked off farmers market 2 Sundays ago. I was invited by market manager Tom Carey. Fantastic. They did get a little bit of a rain situation at the very end of the first Sunday, but we went again this past Sunday, and it's a great opportunity for people to come visit our community, buy local, fresh grown. There are vegetables available. We had great asparagus from McElroy's. I I got soap from Chickadee Goat Soap Lady, great Mexican food that was there, and I can't remember the vendor that had that, but there's been approximately 20 vendors every single Sunday, and it's mutually beneficial to our community, because if you're stopping at the farmer's market, then more than likely you're gonna maybe stop one or two other places in town, so that's been fun for me so far this season. So I'd encourage anybody to get out there on a Sunday, it's a good way to spend some time when it's not raining.
And real
Yes.
quick,
John?
Kent, this is your last council meeting, isn't it?
Right,
Yes.
Thank you again.
Yep, thank you very much, Ken.
thank you guys.
We're not done with you yet.
No.
I also have a video.
Yeah, I wanna see it, send it to me, I'd love to see it.
Which brings up a quick question.
Yes.
Have you had any applicants?
So Barb did inform me that we did have one applicant submitted today, and the application time period is still open until June 6th. At that time, we'll take the applications received. We will review them during our June 10th council meeting, and any applicants are welcome to come, share their reason why they would like the open seat on our council, and then by the last council meeting, which I think is June 24th, we would seat that new council member into that open seat. So, again, not just our boards that we have vacancies on, we are looking to fill a council member seat. And any questions, contact us, we'd be happy to answer those for you. You're making fun down there.
No.
You're giggling. So, we will keep you
And I'll
that.
be talking to somebody tomorrow that might be possible.
So, with that, I am going to go ahead and adjourn our meeting for this evening.